On today's History of Politics, we're going to start to get into the meat and potatoes of things. But we're going to start with some of the basics. Now, up until now, our series has mostly been about the Constitution. For the last 2-3 weeks, we've been going through the amendments, the articles, the preamble. We went through the whole Constitution. We explained it out to you. If you didn't get it, well, go back into the playlist. They're all there numerically. Okay? First Amendment through 27th Amendment, as well as Article 1 through Article 7. They're all there, and then we concluded with the preamble. Now we're going to start talking about some legal concepts. And today is one of the basics that people need to know. We're going to talk about the difference between misdemeanors and felonies, and the fact that you actually have two different levels, because you have federal misdemeanors and federal felonies, but then you have state level and lower misdemeanors and felonies. Let's start at the bottom. Okay, let's talk about the misdemeanor. So in our system of jurisprudence, we have ascending levels of courts. First, we have municipal courts. The laws that are used in municipal courts are normally known as ordinances. Okay? For example, a traffic violation. If you're passing through Maybury and the posted speed is 25 miles an hour and you're doing 35 miles an hour, you're violating a municipal ordinance, because the city council and the mayor came together and said that on Main Street in Maybury, you can't drive faster than 25 miles an hour safely. You can't do it. So they created this ordinance, and here it is. Okay. Then we move a step further. We move on up to the county level of jurisprudence. And incidentally, as we're talking about municipality and ordinances, you can be arrested and charged with a felony or misdemeanor. Okay? Now, violating an ordinance, that's usually a ticket. That's a citation. That's not a criminal charge. However, you can get charged with a misdemeanor or a felony in a municipal court. If I were to go to your house and shoot a brick right through your window, it's criminal trespass, for starters. There's also vandalism, because I threw a brick through your window. And what the difference between a misdemeanor and a felony is going to be is the value of the damage. So if I broke a window, how much does it cost to replace a window? Maybe $300 max. That doesn't rise to the level of a felony, so it's going to be a misdemeanor. So more than likely, I'm going to get I'm going to get fines. I'm going to get restitution. Okay. If I've done that several times, there's a possibility that I could be put on probation. Okay. But now let's take it up a notch. Let's say that I came to your house and shot you in your living room. That's a felony charge. So even though the municipal police would arrest me and I would go to the municipal court first and get a bail set, the next step is they're going to kick it right up to the county prosecutor. And the county prosecutor has the powers of the state. And there they will arraign me for the charge of murder, manslaughter, homicide, whatever they feel is appropriate. And they'll take it before the grand jury. And the grand jury will either indict me or they will pass what's called a no bill, meaning that they didn't see enough evidence to take that charge to trial, and they'll kick me loose. Okay? So yes, you can get charged with a misdemeanor or felony in a municipal court. But if it's beyond that which is considered a municipal ordinance violation, they're going to kick it up and it's going to go to the county level. And the county level has the powers of the state. One of the ways that you know the difference is this. In a criminal case, when you look at the paperwork, it's always going to say the state of blank versus you. In a civil case, which is not a criminal case, where there are no misdemeanors or felonies, in a civil case, it's going to be where you did harm against somebody else. So let's go back to that brick through the window scenario. If I shot a brick through your window and you sued me for the cost of replacing that window, then you would be the plaintiff, I would be the defendant. It would be you versus me. And we would go to a civil court. There's no jail involved, but there's money involved. And it could be substantial. It could be substantial because in civil courts, they have something called punitive damages. It's punishment. So yes, they can say, well, you got to pay that $400 for that window. In addition, you're going to pay $1,000, Tim, for pain and suffering plus court costs. So that $400 window could just turn into $2,500 easily. And if you have an attorney, you got to pay him too. So that's an issue. State courts, normally, when you go to the county, that's really a state superior court, but it sits in a county. But when we talk about the actual state courts, we're talking about appellate courts, okay, and the Supreme Court. Every state has a network of appellate courts and finally a state court, okay, and the state court is the Supreme Court. And all they do, they don't try cases. Appellate, and that's the difference between lower courts and appellate courts and Supreme Courts. They do not try cases. They review the case to see if there was any judicial or prosecutorial errors, and then they make a ruling on that. Supreme Courts normally go with a question of law. That's normally how that works. Now, on the other hand, when you do something that crosses a state line or violates a federal law, then it can go to a federal court. A lot of times, the misdemeanor stuff normally gets away. Usually, if it's a misdemeanor, it's something committed by an official, a federal official. But there are federal felonies. The transporting of drugs is one. In many places, although it's not charged that often unless it's a serious case, but possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, whether it's in state or federal court. Federal felonies that you could get caught up in. Bank robbery. You can rob a bank in New Jersey, but it's because they're FDIC, federally insured. You're going to a federal court for that. Federal misdemeanors, burn a flag. That's a federal misdemeanor. Go to a veteran's cemetery and knock over a gravestone. Federal misdemeanor. Throw a flag in a grave. Federal misdemeanor. Just for examples. Now, let's get down to the bottom line. What is the difference between a misdemeanor and a felony? The simplest definition is this. A misdemeanor, the harshest punishment you can get is 364 days in jail, which is county jail time, which is state time. It's not felony time. Felony time is 1 year, 365 days or more. That's basically the best way to tell the difference between the two. A misdemeanor is something that's punishable by less than 365 days, and a felony is punishable by 365 days and up. That's the main dividing line. Then there's also the obvious. I mean, you have different levels of crimes. For example, you can have a shoplifting charge that gives you 30 days in jail. That's a misdemeanor. But if you've got 10 previous shoplifting charges, what can happen is the judge can say, okay, I'm going to give you 30 days, or I'm going to give you 60 days for each, because of your prior record, for each prior record. So I'm going to give you 60 days times 11. Is that still a felony? Is that a felony? Because that would come down to 666 days, which is a little over 2 years. Would that be a felony? No. It's a misdemeanor charge. The idea is that they're going to give you more than a year, but it's compounded because they're all separate sentences. And if they're running what's called consecutively. Now, that's something we're going to touch on in another thing, types of sentencing. A judge could sentence you to concurrent sentences, which means that if you've got two separate charges, two separate sentences, they run together. Or a judge can sentence you to consecutive sentences. In the prisons, they call them running wild. What does that mean? It means that you do one sentence for one charge, and whether you get paroled and maxed out, once that one ends, then you start the next one, which lengthens your sentence. And in the scenario that I gave you with the shoplifter, chances are they're going to run them concurrently because of jail space and, the time and expense of housing an inmate. For a shoplifting charge, it's going to come down to just a flat out 60 days. And normally for 60 days, you're not going to get paroled off of that. Normally, like in a state like New Jersey, out of 60 days, you're going to do 45, 50, and you're going to walk. You're going to max out and you're going to walk. So that's going to be the end of that. But basically, that's the basics of felonies and misdemeanors. If you learned something today, comment, but keep it respectful. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.